Hey, before we get into the episode, I just want to tell you about my free astrology newsletter called the Starzologer. It comes out every Sunday. It's of a lot of interest for astrologers. I explore cosmic currents moving through the ever-changing skies. Most weeks I explore what's coming up in the week and also share some astrology sticky bits and throw in some ideas about buzzing around. You also get stretched with my Extend Yourself sections. So this newsletter is for aspiring astrologers or anyone who's trying to up their astrological knowledge. It's totally free and you can sign up at starzology.com/newsletter. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hello, Alison. It's great to be here again.
Thanks so much for joining me once more. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about cusps.
Yes, we are.
And specifically, actually, we're going to be talking about sign cusps because that comes up more often than house cusps.
Yeah, and house cusps. I mean, cusps. That's a whole other thing. Yeah. But sign cusps.
Yeah. So a cusp is the division between one sign and the next. So when it goes from Leo to Virgo, you have a cusp.
Yeah.
And you've got a cusp between, well, there's 12 cusps, one between each of the pairs of signs.
Yeah. I feel like it's more a word that we used to hear. Like back in the 80s or something, people would say, oh, I'm on the cusp of Cancer and Leo.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I don't hear it as much now, but maybe you do.
Well, you still have people saying, I was born on the cusp. I'm a cusp baby.
I heard someone say that recently, and and that actually was what gave me the idea to do this podcast.
Yes.
Because I believe we were actually at the table together, and it was our server at Relish. Shout out Relish the pub if you're in Vancouver.
It was her.
Friends of the podcast, Jess. Yay. Hi, Jess. She was like, I'm on the cusp of...
something in Taurus, I remember.
Taurus, yeah, exactly. And we were like shaking our heads like, no, there's no cusps. But yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of people, clearly statistically, it makes sense that a lot of people would think that because there's one day where it is really up for grabs.
Yeah.
If you don't know what time you were born, or if you just think, I was born
on the cusp
in the evening or in the morning.
Well, you see, honestly, I think the general public do not even know.
Yeah, I mean, the sign changes at one point during that day.
Yes.
Right? And if you are just a casual consumer of astrology, like you read your daily horoscope or you see like a Capricorn coffee mug and you're like, oh, the dates are blah, blah, blah. But I'm, and then maybe depending on where you live in the world, it could actually change to what's printed on those, those little products. It could say like the 21st or the 22nd that it changes signs. And you could grow up thinking, well, what? Sometimes it looks like I'm a Sagittarius and sometimes I'm a Capricorn. How's that?
Yeah.
So
the answer is get your chart cast, right?
Yeah. I mean, the answer is, first of all, hopefully you know what time you were born.
Well, yes.
Yeah, because otherwise.
Good heavens, yes.
All is lost. No, just kidding. but that's maybe something for another. Or we can get into that later about times of birth and the cusps there, which don't exist, but also are very important to know. And they clear up all of that. Yeah. All of that cuspy garbage.
Yeah. So what really is bringing this up is that people in the general public, or even anybody who's learning astrology, may say, I'm a Capricorn. Mm-hmm. And then when you actually cast their chart, it turns out they're a Sagittarius. Yeah. And this is because the sun had actually moved signs either the day before or day close to the cusp day that a general horoscope would put those sign dates from this to the 21st, to the 21st. And maybe they were born on the 21st and they say, I am a Capricorn. And yet they actually turned out to be a Sagittarian because the sun had already...
They were born in the morning and it was still in Sagittarius.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. And as you say with our friend downstairs, she specifically said she was on the cusp, I think, of Taurus and Gemini. And of course, we look at her and she's clearly a Taurus.
Yeah.
But
totally.
But... you do have people who would then say, so I'm a bit of both. Now, I don't like that one either.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many reasons that could be, too. There are so many reasons. I mean, first of all, there's the dreaded confirmation bias where you grow up thinking one thing and then everything that you hear about Gemini, for example, you're like, oh, well, I am chatty. I am flirtatious. I do like my trivia, whatever. But at the same time, you don't know anything about the rest of your chart. You might have Gemini rising. You might have the moon in Gemini. You might have Venus in Gemini. And all these things. You could even have Mercury in Gemini and be a Taurus. And that would definitely color your personality towards the Gemini's, end of the whatever cusp supposed thing. Yeah. And especially with sun signs being, okay, so the Mercury can only be one sign away from your sun sign. Venus can only be 2 signs away at most. And so it's very likely that whatever your sun sign is, you will have one of those major, either your moon or your rising or Mercury or Venus in the same sign as your sun, or one to the right.
So let me ask you, do you have Mercury or Venus in your sun sign?
I do. I have Mercury in my sun sign.
Yeah, I do too, but not Venus. So I've got Mercury there already.
Yeah, and I've got Venus one sign away. But in Mercury, for me, it was like I'm like 0 and 13 minutes into Virgo. Like if I'd been born, an hour earlier, I would have the Mercury in Leo, which would be crazy.
Yes.
I would, That would be a whole different me.
A whole different you. Yeah. So even though, for instance, that they generally say that Capricorn starts on December the 21st, it frequently does. And I did some research earlier today because I needed to get my facts here before we had this chat. And what actually happens is that during, if we start, let's consider that the sun goes round in 365.25 days and a few minutes.
Yeah.
So every 4 years, we've got this leap year day that they add on, which you all know about. Yeah. But what this means is that as on the leap year, the sun will enter Capricorn on the 21st at 9:20. I've got a table about this anyway. The next year, it'll enter on the 21st at 15:03. So it's about 5 hours later.
Oh, interesting.
The year after that, it's still on the 21st, but now we are at 2050, another 5 hours later.
Oh.
And then on the 4th year, it's actually on the 22nd. It's moved over to 2 a.m., another 5 hours later. So what happens is from the leap year, it slowly creeps forward around 5 hours when it's entering the new sign.
And then it jogs back because around 4 to 5 hours, like that's 4 years, then there's the leap year.
The leap year resets it.
Wow.
So they reset at leap year, and then the next leap year, which is 2028 from here, it's then on the 21st at 8 again. Wow. And it goes up from there. So
and that's just Capricorn as an example. That's probably all of us.
Oh, well, it's the same for all of them. But I pulled Capricorn because
that's amazing. Like, there you go. There it is.
Well, exactly.
That's why. Amazing.
Right there. Yeah. And of course, clearly, it depends where you are in the world. These, I've got to, if you're following along, you can click the blog post link, and there's tables there where I've laid it all out for 2 leap year cycles to show that it's actually creeping forward all the time, and then it resets at leap year.
So if you were born on one of those cusp days, go look at the table.
Yes.
Either get your chart done, or if you want something done quickly and for free, go to astro.com and make sure you know what time you're born and the time zone.
Yes.
Because time zones make a difference, and daylight savings time. All of that factors in. So if you're born on, the cusp of
December 21st
day, and then maybe the moon changed signs that day too, because it changes every 3 days ish, 2.5 days, whatever. And maybe, you don't know what time you were born. Maybe it's like, sometime in the morning, sometime before noon. Like, oh God. And if that's winter, like, okay, had the sun risen? Like, let's boil it down. Does the mother remember, was there sun coming in through the hospital window? Were you knocked out unconscious? Does dad remember?
All of these things.
And if you can narrow it down to at least within like a 2-hour range, then you can say, okay, I know I'm one of these ascendant signs, and we'll get into that because that's where cusps really come into play. Is with ascendant signs, because that's the one where if you don't know exactly what time you're born, you are going to really want to look at the comparison of those 2 adjacent signs and say, okay, well, am I more Aries or Taurus? And usually it's going to be pretty easy to tell, especially once you're, grown up enough to be looking up your chart, asking your parents these questions, and, maybe consulting an astrologer, hopefully. Yeah. But if you don't know, we can get into that later about what are the things to look for if I can't decide if I have Aries rising or Taurus rising.
I know.
Yeah.
So what we're really saying is that if you were born on December the 21st of any year, You have you are 3 times more likely to be a Capricorn than you are to be a Sagittarius, but 1 in 4 will be Sagittarius, and it's the same for all the cusps.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the point. So 2 people, here's the point. 2 people born on December the 21st, different years.
Yeah.
1 is a Capricorn, 1's a Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Same birthday.
Right. Yeah. And also, it could be they're both born at noon.
Yeah.
And depending on the year, it would still be different.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
This is exactly it.
Wow.
So it happens for all the cusps, and this is where it comes from, where this discrepancy is coming from, that we're making these adjustments for leap years.
Yeah.
And then if we want to get into the nitty-gritty, and why wouldn't we? Because we do love a bit of Virgo nitty-gritty.
We really do.
We do.
You said nitty-gritty, and I got all chills in my arms. Yeah.
So you then do have the leap century reset. So those few minutes I was talking about, well, every 400 years, they reset it again.
Wow.
Because in every 400-year period, we end up with three days too many leap years.
Yeah.
So on the 400th leap year that's supposed to be, there won't be.
Is that coming up?
No, the nearest, not in our lifetime. Okay. The next one's going to be the year 2400.
We don't have to worry about
I
that.
know, but the point is that it's this is what we're measuring against. And we're tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. Yeah. How the old guys 2,000 years ago could work all this stuff out, God knows.
I know. And they figured out almost within 200 miles the Earth's circumference.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So this also has an impact, I think, because what we're talking about is, the question really is my sun at 29 Sagittarius, or is it at 0 Capricorn? And it could be any of the signs. But the 29th degree is also the anaretic degree.
Right.
So this is one of those critical sensitive degrees where, what do we call it? It's the critical degree, and it has some significance and interpretation. I've got some notes here. So any planet that's on the 29 degrees 00 minutes to 29:59 is an anaretic degree.
Yeah.
So it's the very tail end of the sign. So the one we're talking about now would be Sagittarius. Yeah. And some indications for this is that it would be unstable at that point. It's a turning point or transitional period. It carries extra weight of importance because it's critical degree, and it represents completion or culmination of the energy because it's right at the end of Sagittarius.
Yeah.
But these planets generally don't have much say. It does not, being anaretic does not promote a planet. It tends to reduce a planet.
It's almost like the sign version of having your sun in the 12th house. Right?
It becomes moot, M-O-O-T.
Yeah, interesting.
So, I mean, you may have planets in anaretic degrees. I don't know if you do.
No.
I actually don't.
It's bizarre. Most of my planets are in the first 5 degrees. It's the 3 decans or whatever they say.
Yeah.
Is that pronouncing it right? Decans?
I call them decans.
Yeah.
Tomato, decans. Yeah.
Decans. Yeah. But most of my planets, strangely enough, are just in the first, 5 degrees. Definitely first 10. Yeah.
I don't have anything at 29 anyway.
No.
So, and then the next thing to consider with this is that this is why, because of the way the sun is moving in this position that I've explained about, that it's moving every 5 hours, it's moving further forward each single year, that when you get a solar return, you can have it the day before your birthday because the sun has reset, or the day after. So it won't always be, it depends where you live.
Yeah.
So for me, because I was born in England and I'm now living in Vancouver, my solar return is always at least the day before, if not the 2 days prior to my birthday. It is never after it because I moved west.
So if you were born on a cusp day, would you ever, and this is me asking as a noob, would you ever have your sun in the previous sign? No, you wouldn't, because it would still return to the minute.
You would still want the birth moment degree.
You would, even if like relocation, you would still have to. Interesting.
Yeah. So this is it. So that solar return is also on this 4-year cycle that's blip, 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 reset.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where it's come from. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because now and then you do get a client who says, like she said, I'm a Taurus, and she said, I'm on the cusp between Taurus and Gemini. And I mean, clearly when we just looked at her, we knew she was a Taurus.
Yeah.
But admittedly, we haven't done her chart yet. We'll have to get her details.
Yeah.
And
she is actually going to have a baby soon. And it's okay. She's telling people. We're not revealing anything crazy.
Okay.
So, yeah, and she already knows it's a girl. We've seen the ultrasound pictures. So what better time? Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's so exciting.
So this is great. So we've basically been talking about when the sun is on the cusp at the 29th degree or the 0 degree, and the person thinks they're one sign and they're the other. And the question really is, are they both signs if their sun is actually right on that exact cusp? Now, I personally, when my computer tells me it's 0 degrees, 0 minutes, I'm taking the new sign.
Yeah.
You can do as you wish. And the question really remains here, because some astrologers want to give it an orb, because the actual disk of the sun, I think, is 0 degrees, 29 minutes wide.
Oh, boy.
So you could argue that even if it's at 0 degrees, 0 minutes, then 28 minutes are still sticking into the other sign behind or ahead.
Right.
And yes, astrologers talk about this stuff, after a couple of beers, we're definitely talking about this. But personally, I never do. I always go with the sign that the computer says the planet is in, the sun particularly. Yeah. The sun's really the only one that's disk is big enough that we can even have this conversation.
Totally, yeah.
Whereas other planets where you say, well, is your moon in Taurus or is it in Gemini? You've really got to take it pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It could be on the cusp there. And then, of course, with the moon, you've got to double check the parallax if it's square to the sun, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But the other planets are either 29 something or other, like Pluto's, lingering at 29 Capricorn.
Well, exactly. And for months and months.
Months.
Yeah. And then there's retrograde phases, and that's one thing you don't have to worry about with the sun, thank God. But yeah.
This is it. So Mercury's been hanging about in 29 degrees for a long time. And it is eventually going to finally move into Aquarius shortly. And
Pluto,
Pluto.
Yeah.
And not go back again.
Yeah.
So this Pluto's been hanging around in that anaretic degree, and then the day will come when it actually moves over. And we're not concerned about its size because it's so small we can't see it.
Right.
But with the sun there is this debate.
Yeah.
Well, do they have the energies of both signs? Do they have? And I don't believe they do. Yeah. I don't believe people do.
Well, that's the thing too. If they feel like they have that, it may be because they've
got other planets there.
Which is very, very possible.
Exactly. Yeah. Because as you say, most people will have Mercury and or Venus in the same sign as their sun. Yeah. And you and I both have Mercury in the same sign as our sun.
Yeah.
So already
the moon in the same sign. So
say no more.
Very Virgo.
So yes, and so that comes through.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing, because the point is that when you get a client who says, "Oh, I'm a Sagittarius," and it turns out they're a Capricorn, it shifts their whole understanding of who they are, and then they start questioning astrology, because the horoscope magazine says if you're born on the 21st, you must be a Capricorn.
Right, and they've been reading that all their life and finding it to be whatever,
it doesn't quite fit,
true
maybe,
or not true, or
and that's what it says, because they were born on the 21st, but actually that was the 4th year when actually the sun was already still in Sagittarius, and you come along and say, "I'm happy to tell you, you're a Sagittarian." And it's a mind shift
for people. They have to go out and buy new clothes, sporting equipment,
exactly,
book some vacations.
But one of the other problems is that this is when people say, "Yes, but that just shows astrology doesn't work," and it's one of those arguments that kind of we're trying to clarify that.
Yeah.
That this is why, and if you are practicing astrology, you need to be able to explain this to your clients and say, "This is why you're a Sagittarian."
Yes.
And it's not just because that Marie Claire got the wrong date, because in general it's the 21st, but you happen to be the 22nd.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation that I'd say it comes up twice a year. It's not something I talk about all the time, because you don't frequently get people with born on cusp days. But they're out there. And
I mean, statistically, like 1 in 12, right?
Yeah, or 1 in 24, actually. No, 24 out of 365, because there's 2. It's either 29 or 0.
Oh, yeah.
So 24 out of 3365, which is what? I don't know. 12%, 13%, something like that.
Yeah.
We haven't got those numbers at our head. But the point is that of the population, very interesting. So you do get this too if you've got twins, and the one is born at, and the first twins are Sagittarian, the second twins are Capricorn.
Oh my God.
I know. So obviously they've got entirely different personalities, but they're identical twins, and yet they were born at a different time.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Totally. Usually you can kind of, the differences with twins, like there's an ascendant thing that you can, or just a few house positions will shift within those minutes. Yes. But yeah, that's crazy if they're born on a cusp day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember a million years ago when I first started doing astrology in South Africa, and the Rosenkovitz sex triplets were born.
Wow, that is a mouthful. Back
in the 70s, and there were 6 of them, live birth in Johannesburg, and the astrologers were all on this. I don't have the details at the moment, but you can definitely search that back up.
Yeah.
And there were 6 live births came through, and all these kids came through, and the astrologers had a field day with that. Super interesting. Yes.
That would make one of those good, like that 49 up, or like 7 up,
that's
whatever.
it.
Where they check in every 7 years and they see how like these kids who grew up in the UK are all, living different lives or whatever. But it would be neat to sort of check in on those.
You can still Google it, and they're still going. Well, they must be, 40, 50 years old now, but still, it was huge at the time. So anytime you got twins, you always want to be looking for things like that. It's super interesting.
Oh, God, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So the other thing that is something that you'd want to look at is if you don't know exactly what time you were born, but you have an idea, like it was morning, it was afternoon, it was around the time of the baseball game, because my dad was in the waiting room watching baseball. And, it was like before the 9th inning, but blah, blah, blah. And he forgot to look at his watch, whatever. I've actually, literally, that is something that I've heard from a friend. Not sure because the dad lost talk because he was watching the baseball game in the waiting room. But yeah, so I mean, if you have it narrowed down to a couple of hour range, that will, usually you will have like an ascendant where you can kind of go, okay, if it was like 6 a.m., it was around dawn, it was around noon, whatever. But if you're like, it was any time between like, 8 a.m. and noon, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., something like that. Then there will be 2 ascendant signs that are possible. And you'd want to go through a whole rectification thing if you are super interested in it, if you have the money to consult an astrologer who is an expert in rectification, and then they can bring in life events and they can say, okay, well, you went through this, personal trauma, and that was on this time, and that was because Saturn was blah, blah. But if you are just curious and you think you can narrow it down, let's go through just some like, I don't know, keywords or things to look for.
The physical look of the ascendant.
Yeah, because the ascendant is your physical look, your presentation, the way your mannerisms, the way you dress, your gait, the way you walk, not as much communication style, but if you talk with your hands, the way you physically communicate, if you're one of these people who like looms close to somebody and sort of like, hovers over them as you talk, or
because each sign presents differently.
Like a super fast talker who's just like bubbling over with ideas, Gemini rising, or someone who's constantly like fact checking the thing and will like annotate the conversation. Well, you could read this or that, but Virgo rising, very likely, or someone who's constantly peppering you with questions and wants to get to the bottom of something, and then maybe that reminds them of a conspiracy theory. Maybe Scorpio rising. So these are things that are, we're saying it in a kind of lighthearted way, but if you are trying to narrow it down and you want to kind of DIY it, we'll just go through
absolutely
the ascendant cusps and say, so if you Aries, Taurus cusp. So the difference between an Aries and a Taurus, if you are wearing red all the time versus like always knowing what luxury brands are and noticing what other kinds of what shoes people are wearing, or noticing what jewelry people are wearing. Taurus rising.
And signs tend to be stocky.
Yeah, okay.
They do. They've got that kind of a neck.
I thought stocky, like that stocky. For some reason I was thinking like stalker, and I'm like,
no.
Cool. Yeah. I was like, really? I'd never heard that.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're like more of a sporty dresser, maybe Aries rising. Yes. If you're more like in the luxury brands and like
maybe Taurus rising.
You can still be sporty dressing, but like it really matters what brand shoes you have. Maybe Taurus rising.
Yes.
Yeah. Or if you're always getting up to do karaoke, maybe Taurus rising, because they
maybe
do have
they
that singing
they
thing.
sing, yeah.
But if you're, signing up to do Taibo and all the different, that kind of thing.
The martial arts, definitely.
Maybe, Aries rising. So Taurus and Gemini.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say the chattiness, the gossipiness, all of that stuff is super Gemini rising.
I also think the air signs are generally the tallest of the ascendants. They're tall and I don't say lanky, but yes.
Or they have a tall and lanky presence about them. Maybe you've always been told, oh, I thought you were taller. Like when you say how short you are, maybe people are like, oh, I always thought you were taller. Wow, okay, maybe Gemini rising.
Yeah, whereas I say if Taurus is stocky, Gemini's tall.
Totally, yeah. And also there's a thing with Gemini rising eyebrows.
Is there?
Oh, these pointy elfin little eyebrows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I really do notice that with celebrities, with people who I know who have Gemini rising. There's this pixie-ish kind of like,
okay,
of, not necessarily.
I'm sure you've got a goddess lined up for that as well, right?
Badass goddesses.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, so there would be there's a difference of weightiness. There's
of the presence of the person.
The gravitas of the person. And it's not about weight, and it's not about, that, but it's about how you carry yourself. So if you carry yourself with a sort of more lighthearted kind of airy sort of feeling versus like a more solid kind of feeling, that would be more of a Gemini rising versus Taurus rising, regardless of your actual body mass.
Yes.
Yeah. So Gemini and Cancer, that's a big difference.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Cancer rising, one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at celebrities with all the different rising signs is that all the women who have Cancer rising tend to have these just voluptuous kind of
massive boobs.
The boobs and the lips. Like Molly Ringwald, Angelina Jolie.
Yes.
And even the
there
men.
You go. Yeah.
Even the men. I think Richard Gere, I could be wrong about that one, but there's a voluptuousness. There's the sensuality.
A soft roundness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's not necessarily a maternal roundness, but it can be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that definitely is contrast to the more androgynous sort of
little ballerina
the
looking.
Playful ballerina sexuality of Gemini, which is almost like, what? Oh, me?
Yes.
Yeah. And the Cancer rising is more like, let me give you a hug.
Yes.
Sink into me,
into the bosom of
me protect you and take you away from all this. Yeah. So Cancer versus Leo.
Yes. So
let's talk about entrances.
Let's talk about entrances and hair.
Hair. Oh, there's such a thing with Leo hair. Oh my God, Leo rising hair especially. Like whatever race they are, there's a thing for blonde.
Yeah.
Trump has Leo rising.
Oh, right.
There's, I think Tina Turner maybe. There's a ton of celebrities who, regardless of race, they just bleach their hair. Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's the mane, right? It's the main thing. It's the lion's mane. So if
you know anyone who goes for improv classes or thinks they could try their hand at stand-up comedy, and you're like, wow, okay, or they have their own business card for no reason, and they don't. They just have it. They just have a printed business card, and you're like, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, it's just me."
Yes, make an entrance. Absolutely. Entrances are made.
Yeah,
one does not just enter a room. You make an entrance.
Yeah.
Pausing in the threshold and moving on. Yeah,
and there might be some yellow, like gold.
Yes. And I think too, someone was describing them like an ocean-going liner in full flop, and they're just moving forward and. That's
People are breaking champagne bottles on the prow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Leo rising.
So Leo rising versus Virgo rising. I would say there is a conversational style to Virgo rising where they will let the other person talk.
Yes.
More so, maybe.
Yes, perhaps.
But once you get them talking, they might be correcting your grammar. They might be mentioning books they've read.
Yes.
They might be peculiarly observant about details about you and then mentioning them back to you, and you go, Yikes, you were paying such close attention.
So I get, if I send out my newsletter and there's a typo, the Virgos let me know about it. And I think, thanks so much, guys. Thank you. Yes, I know that comma was in the wrong spot.
I've done that, and I felt like I was helping, but
I know. Oh, and that's what I think too. I think, thank God for the Virgos, because
otherwise, how would you know?
and this happened this week because my particular newsletter went out with an error on the degree, which is terrible. But I have been informed, and yes,
I saw a typo. I didn't want to say.
I have been shown the error of my ways. So anyway, but the point is, yes, they're very good on that sort of thing.
And, if you need an editor, my God,
yeah, absolutely, brilliant, and why not? Yeah,
exactly. So Virgo versus Libra.
Yes, now there's a difference.
Well, there might be a fashion sense difference here.
I do think Libras are very well put together,
They
well groomed.
Yeah, it's not
composed,
about natural beauty,
yeah.
but there is a symmetry. There is a symmetry.
Yes.
Yeah. I think JFK had Libra rising.
Really? They usually have a center parting as well in the hair.
Yeah, there's and
perfect eyebrows. There's nothing kind of squonk about.
No, it's very appropriate, very gender appropriate too.
Yes.
Like there's very, man hair, woman hair. Yeah, and I've also, this is one of those interesting things. When I did my ascendant presentation several years ago.
Yeah.
One of the funny things was if you have a type, but you're like, this man or woman is a different race than I usually go for, or a different height than I usually go. But God, they're attractive.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they have Libra rising.
Right.
It's just they transcend all those barriers.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think Sidney Poitier, I believe.
Okay.
I believe Will Smith before the slapping. I believe he might have had. Don't quote me on that, but there were a lot of these people who you're like, I don't normally go for blank whatever, but this person.
This time we're going to. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of symmetry, a lot of just conventional beauty. Conventional beauty. Yeah. And then Virgo, it's a little more unassuming. Virgo rising.
Oh yes. Yes.
It's a little. I believe Kathy Bates might have Virgo rising. There's some very studious looking people. There's a lot of
the librarian look.
There's a lot of glasses, weirdly enough. Yeah, like just people who look smarter than And not to say Libra rising couldn't be smarter. I'm just saying
it's the look.
If you're deciding, and one is the librarian look, and the other looks, like Ginger from the island, you're gonna, go.
Yeah.
So Libra versus Scorpio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well.
Scorpio, you don't miss them. You can't miss a Scorpio rising.
Yeah. And it's not because they're out there and flashy. They just have it's that penetrating gaze, maybe.
It's the presence. That's dangerous.
Yeah. They'll notice you before you notice them.
Probably.
Sometimes. And you might think, are they judging me? Are they flirting with me? Do they want to
kill me?
What is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to know what's going on. They want to scan the room.
Mm-hmm.
They want to sit in the back corner. They never want to sit with their back
facing the door.
No, never back to the door. Exactly. They want to face the door. That samurai, ninja thing, and they want to know what everybody's MO is, what's going on. Yeah.
They're very, very different. Very sexy looking. Very.
Yeah. Prince had Scorpio rising.
There you go.
Tons of people, but yeah. Lots of.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Sagittarius versus Scorpio rising.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another thing with big mane of hair. Like Sagittarius rising has a mane of hair.
And they tend to be disheveled.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like that Mick Jagger look where you've got just kind of big hair and big kind of messy clothes. But there's a sexiness about it, but it's like an outdoorsy sexiness. It's a worldly sort of wild kind of sexiness, like your crocodile.
They're not buttoned up at all, are they?
No. There's definitely an open to the
Yes.
the few buttons open at the top there. Yeah, like long legs.
Yes.
There's definitely there's a big presence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's it's not about taking up a lot of space. It's just there's this big psychic presence. I'm picturing, like a Tony Robbins or something like a big, tall, boisterous kind of getting in your face presence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
confident, very confident.
Yeah. Like a rock star quality, regardless of
That's
the.
right. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Capricorn.
Well, this is the cusp we were talking about, right?
Yeah, Sagittarius, Capricorn. I mean, there's an interesting thing with Capricorns and how they age, and which is to say, well.
They do age well.
They for sure, yeah.
They do age well.
Dane Hopkins has Capricorn rising. A bunch of different people who have like very chiseled is a word that comes to mind.
Yes.
It's like there's this just sort of gravitas that comes about, and which isn't to say that Sagittarius rising doesn't age well, but their bodies might be more lived in appearing.
Yes,
It's just like rifling through the suitcase and like, let's put this on.
That's right.
The Capricorn rising rarely looks like they just like threw something on.
No, never.
No. It's more. There's definitely like a
composure.
Yeah, like even if they're like traveling the world, it's like they will hop off the plane kind of looking more like James Bond than Mick Jagger.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a seriousness about it too, but they can be very. It's actually one of those peculiarly lighthearted. There's a lot of like really famous comedians who have Capricorn rising or are Capricorns, and like Jim Carrey, for example. And when he played Andy Kaufman, I noticed that there was like a connection in their charts that was very significant, which is really interesting. There's a lot of that with people who play other people.
Yeah.
I found.
Yeah.
Famously, what was the name of the dude who played Stephen Hawking? I can't remember the name.
I don't know the name of the guy.
Yeah, the young guy who played him.
Okay.
When he met him, I know I've quoted this before, but I just love this little factoid. He actually met Stephen Hawking, and one of the things he said to him was, "We're both Capricorns," which of course the physicist was not impressed.
Yes,
but
yes.
It's adorable that he said that, and I find that very cute. And it's true. Yeah. There you go. So Capricorn versus Aquarius. The Aquarians are quirky. They have a quirkiness.
They are. If you can pin them down.
That David Bowie-ness, that Tilda Swinton-ness, like
fashion trendy.
There's an androgyny, a futuristicness, a
edgy looking.
Edgy, yeah.
They're not wearing stuff like I wear, you know.
No, they just
It's a lot of accessorizing, I think, as well, and the hair's always kind of
different.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's definitely something about that. And,
so if they look more different and eccentric than a Capricorn, that's a good way to tell them apart.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Capricorn, Aquarius versus Pisces.
Well, Pisces is the floaty gossamer look, isn't it? It's
sure. Yeah.
It's the caftan and the...
Yeah. And with men, there might be some facial hair or some, I don't want to say man bun, but maybe... Maybe. Yeah, it's a very much more loosey-goosey look. Yes.
It's not pulled together when it's Pisces, I don't think.
Yeah.
And frequently they wear odd shoes, which I've noticed.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy thing.
That is interesting, yeah.
My mother had this, and she would. Remember her going out in odd shoes and not realizing.
When you say odd, do you mean like mismatched?
Yes, one shoe from a different pair, but they looked kind of similar. Because they got a lot of shoes, right?
Yeah.
Well. And we were at the bus stop. I said, I don't think those shoes match. And she said,
I love that.
It's crazy. Are they also quite good at this mismatched socks thing, where there's a red sock and a white sock or whatever it is, and it's all the feet. It really is.
And they're like, who's going to notice but a Taurus?
Exactly.
They don't care to impress the Taurus. Yeah. Wow.
So, I think so. I think they're much more floaty, and the women tend to have hair that just kind of... that does its own thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing sculptured.
Maybe the frizzy or the floaty or they might just shave it all off to just not worry about that.
Yes.
And that could be taken as like an Aquarian quirky thing, but with the Pisces, it's just like, let's just focus on what's important.
Yes. Yes.
Look into my eyes.
Into my soul.
Into my soul. Yes, exactly. And the final one would be Pisces Aries, which I mean,
jeez.
After listening to all this, if you can't tell the difference between Pisces and an Aries.
Yeah. Aries rising. They're in your face. They let you know. You don't miss them. Yeah. No, you can't miss a fire sign. Yeah. So,
so there you go.
Very interesting. Yeah. So that's a bit of a roundup of the cusps between two different signs that come up through ascendants, which is, what we're talking about.
For sure.
And it is a way of not only that, but if you have you've got a question about which signs the sun's in, you can also go down this road by understanding the archetype of the sign, I think. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a good quick look at cusps, sign cusps, the sun's cusp, where the sun is.
Yeah.
What do we feel about cusps? And there's the difference between one sign and another.
Yeah.
And there is a difference because the signs next to each other are entirely different.
Right.
They've got different elements, different modes, and different polarities. They're entirely different.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, please do consider sharing it with anybody who would be interested. You can email us at starzology@gmail.com, and certainly do sign up for our newsletter, which comes out every Sunday. Please do follow Arwynne, and she is at...
I'm at mspink.net. That's mspink.net. Please subscribe. And
you're chatting about...
I am chatting about art, books, history, sociology, politics, just movies, TV, general interest, and some astrology.
Yeah, of course, and some astrology. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Arwynne, thank you so much for joining me again on this episode.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thanks so much, folks.
See you next time.
Bye. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.